You've seen the viral videos, the groundbreaking short-form content, the insane brand building potential.
And he's like, hey, do you know who Gary Vee is? I'm like, no. He's like, awesome. He's like, you're gonna go home tonight. He has this vlog, it's called the DailyVee. I went home that night, I'm watching the vlog, I'm like, wow, this dude Gary is awesome.
Now, meet the mastermind behind it all.
Gary's like, I'm gonna steal Jason. Like, he's like, oh, he got stolen from you? I'm gonna steal Jason.
Today's guest went from filming Snowstorms in his hometown to leading content strategy for one of the internet's most iconic personal brands.
But it really started to happen when I was like picking up my first freelance clients, and I was like, got it. I'm not just producing a video and sending it to the client. There was like this relationship being built, especially with pretty much my mentor.
Join us in today's episode as we unpack the systems that powered Gary Vee's content empire, how to build a brand when nobody knows your name,
watching how like Gary's vlogs are being made, how they're like using a hook, then an intro, then there's like these story elements to it. So I'm like really like absorbing, but then putting in a lot of reps.
the truth about burnout, creativity, and starting over.
And it was a lot. I was definitely burnt out by the end of it. Like I didn't realize it, but once I got to Europe and like sort of like consolidating my life and working.
And what the future of his creative consultancy means for himself, his team, and founders looking to build a personal brand that actually converts.
And even now, like running my business, like I see it, I'm like, all right, cool. Like I don't need to spend all this time with maybe an employee or future client. I'm like, I can get it done way faster. So I think a little bit more like that.
If you're tired of recycled advice and want to hear how elite creative strategy actually gets done, this is the episode for you.
And he was kind of like the driving force that was like, hey, if you don't take this opportunity, you might regret it in the future. And I just want you to hedge against that. Probably good advice. And so I ended up taking it just based on how much he wanted me to hedge against regret.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying the videos, why not consider subscribing? We drop bi-weekly content that will help you improve your business right here on the channel. Jason, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for jumping on.
Yeah, Jordan, thanks for having me, man.
Can we kind of kick off with you and just talk through your first project or moment when you kind of realized, I'm not just a videographer, I'm not just here with a camera, I'm actually a storyteller.
Yeah. I'll give a little context. Past year and a half was head of content for Posner in a place where he wanted to expand his, brand outside of music. 5 years before that was with Gary Vee. And, back to your question, it happened early on. I noticed like even when I picked up a GoPro in 2015 that there was this like inkling for it, but it really started to happen in 2017 when I was like picking up my first freelance clients. And I was like, got it. I'm not just producing a video and sending it to the client. There was like this relationship being built, especially with pretty much my mentor at this point. And so, yeah, I could tell you more about that, but that's when it started happening.
For sure, yeah, I want to dive into that. So you mentioned there picking up a GoPro. What was the reason for that?
Yeah. So it was actually a gift. Yeah, I was in college. I'm an insurance agent, and I'm not going to school for something creative. And so on my off, when I'm out in school and work, I was hiking in the Catskills because I grew up in Long Island, New York. So it was like a 3-hour drive. And then I'm also road biking a lot. My dad had this like 1980s Bianchi. And so I started strapping my phone to the bike and then making small clips for Instagram back when it was like 15-second videos. And then my aunt, who's my godmother, was like, she's like, I want to get you a GoPro. And I had never even mentioned anything about it. She's like, she's seen my videos. She's like, I'm going to send you one. I'm like, no, it's like, $400 or $500. I'm like, don't do that. And then a few months later, it just showed up. And that's how that kind of landed in my, pocket. And then it just allowed me to go further because once I got that, they had their own editing platform. It was called GoPro Studios. And so now I'm jumping off Microsoft Windows, was it Movie Maker? Now I'm in GoPro Studios. And then that that was just the very, very beginning.
Okay. And was that entirely self-taught or were you kind of learning from anyone?
I'm all self-taught. So it's like, get this GoPro. I've jumped off Microsoft Movie Maker. Now I'm in GoPro Studios. Then my sister's fiance at the time, he rips up a drone. I've never seen one before. It was like right when consumer drones started popping off. And I'm like, wow, this thing is amazing. And you can get this cinematic footage. And then DJI dropped like a sort of baseline. It was like the DJI Phantom 3. So I got that. And then soon after, I come home from school. My dad's watching this vlogger on the TV. He's watching YouTube. I'm like, who's this guy? Happens to be Casey Neistat. And so I'm like doing schoolwork, but kind of like watching. And I'm like, this is kind of dope. I'm like, this guy is like recording his day-to-day in New York City. And it's these like beautiful stories and to his own like creative style. And so I got so inspired by him, I picked up the same camera he had at the time, which was a Canon 80D. And so now I had this kit, and that's how it really started like building the momentum of it. And so back to your question, self-taught. I'm watching tutorials, Peter McKinnon. I'm like trying to emulate styles by like Sam Colder. These are all like 2016, 17, 18 YouTubers that were like really just popular and like doing different stuff back then, inspiring a lot of people like me.
Okay. And when do you start kind of commercializing what you're doing? Because you mentioned there kind of you're just filming yourself having fun right at the start. Where does that change?
Yeah, so I could bring it back to like the pivotal moment. I think at this point I've probably taken on a few small gigs, like shooting like interiors of homes for like local real estate people, like just making a few bucks with the knowledge I had. And this is like 2016, 2017. And then I'm in college at the time, as I mentioned, and we had a snow day, and all my friends were like going out. It was a big storm out in Long Island, and we were like had like snowmobiles out and like snowboards, and it was just like fun. And I recorded a video of that day. At the same time, this business owner on Long Island made this post, and he was like, "I'm looking for a video intern," and I messaged him. I'm like, "Hey, I'm in school. I'm interested in doing video. I'm like, maybe there's some synergy." He's like, "Let me see your stuff." And so got a few client things. They're pretty boring, but then I was like, "Oh, I just made this today." And that was like a light bulb moment for him. And he always goes back to that. He's like, "Dude, if you didn't send me that video, he's like, I probably wouldn't have hired you, because he's like, you genuinely just love making videos. He's like, you had an off day from school. What'd you go do? You went and made a video." So yeah, that was the beginning of like client work, so to speak. But then entering into this like bigger chapter with this gentleman.
Okay. And what
Yeah.
what are you kind of doing for him, and how does that relationship develop?
Yeah, so like I said, he's sister tags me in this Facebook post. Gym owner's looking for a video intern. I'm like, cool, I might make a few bucks from this. And then I meet with him, and he's like, "Hey, do you know who Gary Vee is?" I'm like, "No." Like, he's like, "Awesome." He's like, "You're gonna go home tonight." He has this vlog. It's called the DailyVee, and I want you to watch it. He's like, "I want to emulate the style of this vlog, the reality TV show style of it, for my gym." And I went home that night. I'm watching the vlog. I'm like, "Wow, this dude Gary is awesome." And I'm like, I can't believe he has this amazing like photographer, videographer, D-Rock, who's following him. And it's just different. It's like, he's got a lav mic on, and they're following around New York. And I was like, this is so cool. And so I was really inspired. I was like, maybe I can do that one day. But I'm like, let me start with the vision here with the kickboxing school. So yeah, that's how that relationship started. And so yeah, pretty much started making all these vlogs for this gym. They felt like Casey Neistat meets Gary Vee's vlog, but for a women's fitness kickboxing gym. So it wasn't like high combat stuff. It was like middle-aged women just like hitting bags and stuff. But I had craft stories out of it. It was like going up to the instructors, being like, "Hey, how's your day going?" And then making something for their Facebook group, which was actually like the biggest in like on Facebook in for like gyms in the United States.
Very cool. And
Yeah.
still at this point, are you just kind of figuring stuff out by watching YouTube videos, or?
Yeah, so definitely at that point, I'm still only like 2 to 3 years into like shooting, editing, and probably only a year into like proper DSLR. And so then, yeah, I'm making these episodes. I'm looking up stuff. I'm like, how do you add these types of transitions, titles? I'm like watching how like Gary's vlogs are being made, how they're like using a hook, then an intro, then there's like sort of like these story elements to it. So I'm like really like absorbing, but then putting in a lot of reps, because it went from making the gym vlog every week to making like micro content, which is what we called it at the time. Now everyone's like short form reels, TikTok, but this is when like videos were 15 and 30 seconds long. And then not too far after, the gym owner was like, "Hey, like, I want to record my own vlog." And it was really strange at the time, because like no one was doing it at that scale. It feels more normal now, since everyone's like a content creator, and there's definitely a boom where people are like, "Oh, let me hire my own videographer to follow me around." But this was early. This was like 2017, so like I'm coming into his life, and people are like, "Who are you?" And like, "Why is there a camera here?" And but we had like really good momentum in his niche.
And then I guess the next step, correct me if I'm wrong, is things come full circle, right? And you end up actually working for Gary.
Yeah, so I'm working for this guy Ed, who's the entrepreneur. He's the gym owner, and we got a small team now. I got like 2 video interns on the team. They're helping me like produce the vlog for the gym because that's going still. That's how he's generating his revenue. And then his vlog is probably at like 50 episodes. So we've really been like ramping it up. He's getting speaking engagements. Like other gyms around the nation are like, hey, can you come speak at my gym? Flying us out. And yeah, it was like this mini Gary Vee, but gym owner. And then we're like, cool, this is interesting. It's like working for his brand. We're like, I bet this could work for other entrepreneurs, creators. So we started marketing it to people we knew in New York City. And so we called it Daily Turn Media. And like I said, those same interns worked in that media agency. And we worked with, a woman, Sel. She was a woman entrepreneur. She moved from Australia. She was just growing her business. We told her story. I filmed with this paparazzi duo. I found them on a BuzzFeed video. It was super viral. It was like day in the life of a paparazzi. And I was like, I never thought about that before. I'm like, I know of paparazzi, but I was like, I didn't. And then showed a glimpse of their life. And so I DM'd the kid. I was like, hey, can I come shoot with you? I do these like vlogs. He's like, for sure. And then I made a 10 episode series with them. I'm really proud about, because I think I could, quality wise make it a lot better now. But the storytelling of it and what we documented is like, it's fun to look back on, like, running after Justin Bieber, but also telling the story of these like really kind hearted paparazzi. And so I'm doing all these vlogs for these creators, entrepreneurs. And then one of them, I had shot something for free, goes through this consulting session with Gary. And he mentions to Gary, he's like, I tried the video thing. He's like, but he's like, my D-Rock got stolen. And D-Rock meaning his videographer, who was me. And he's like, yeah, you probably know the guy Ed, because like he also had like been connected with Gary. And so Gary's like, I'm gonna steal Jason. Like he's like, oh, he got stolen from you, I'm gonna steal Jason. And so that happens, but I'm not even aware of it. It's just recorded in this boardroom consulting session. And then probably a month after it got posted, I get this DM from this random guy. I've never met him. I don't even know who he is, honestly. I almost deleted it. I thought it was like a weird spam DM, but he's like, hey, I think you're the Jason in this video. Open it up. And it's this like timestamps right to the moment, and it's like I have all the context. I'm like, I know who that guy is. I'm like, they're bringing up my name, and I'm like, Gary Vee wants to steal me. So then I start DMing D-Rock, who I've already met at this point. I'd already asked for the job like 2 years ago, but like I had no videos to like really prove myself, and he kind of ghosted me at the time, like respectively, like I wasn't fit for the job. And then 3 days later, I was working there. Yeah,
that is very cool. That is a very cool story. And what were you kind of hired to do?
Yeah, so at the time, they were like in a deficit of shooters and editors, especially on the long form front. Perfect place for me, considering I just spent like the past 3 years just working on like long form vlogs. So yeah, it's David Rock, who's like the main shooter, Caleb Ralston, who's been on this show. He's another shooter. And then Dustin, who you should get on the show. he is a legend in the Team Gary space and just left for his next part of his journey. But they hired me to make the vlog. And so when I came in, they had a backlog of probably like 30 qualified days that would make an episode for the vlog. And so I walked in, they're like, here's a laptop, here's a hard drive with the footage, and we need this, we need a draft by tomorrow. And it was pretty clear to me, like when I joined, because Gary hired me, I kind of like brought this to the attention of the manager, and the manager was like, fine. He's like, let's see how you are. He's like, but if you can't make the vlog, like I can't keep you on the team. Like that's what I need right now. And luckily I was like super prepared. I had like music ready. Like I knew what I was getting into. So that's what day one sort of like looked like. And it's actually funny, when I walked in, it's like super early. It's like 6 a.m. No one's even there yet. Finally people start trickling around like 9 a.m. And then Andy, who's my like manager, he's like, hey, can you go downstairs and meet Gary? And they have all the stuff from Trash Talk that they just bought, and you got to bring that upstairs. So now I'm in like this mind state of like, maybe I'm just doing anything here to like just be part of the team. But soon after, they're like, get to work.
And what is that kind of initial period like? Like, what does your day look like? What are you involved in?
Different than it is now. I think the team's well oiled. Back then, it was a little bit more scrappy. And so on that day, it was, here's some footage, and I'm meeting some people. I mean, I had to go to like because it's Team Gary is part of VaynerMedia. VaynerMedia is like a 3,000 person global agency. Team Gary functions almost as its own thing, but I still had to meet with HR, and they're like trying to onboard me and stuff on that day. And I literally told the guy, I was like, I need to go edit. I'm like, I don't, I don't care about like 401k this or whatever. I'm like, if I don't make this episode, I'm like, I'm not gonna have a job here. And I was like trying to be nice about it, but it was the truth. And so go back to my seat, spent like 10 hours just reviewing footage and just chopping up, taking selects out. I'm like, what's the story here? For day one, I got a call from Caleb and D-Rock. They're like, hey, can you go shoot Gary tonight? I was like, for sure. Where's he at? They're like, he's meeting with a rapper in Times Square. He's like, do you know how to shoot? I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, they have no context on me really yet. And so I go from like 10 hours editing. Now I meet Gary at this bar. He's like meeting with a CMO right before, and then this like up and coming rap artist comes in, and I'm doing the thing that I was like watching for like all these years.
And is that kind of life with Gary? It's just kind of, I don't want to say chaos, but
It's chaos. It's
okay.
it's structured chaos because like every day is planned out. Things change. Might get sick, or bigger meeting comes up, or a podcast gets canceled or something. But yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize, and I didn't realize at the time, that as much as I was a creative videographer and editor, I still had to be very good at keeping check on Gary's schedule, his belongings, where the car is going to be that's picking him up after this meeting. And so as much as you're shooting, you're kind of like, looking at the calendar going like, oh wow, like we got to figure out like where this car is in the hotel. And so it's a very unique role, but it taught me a lot of like just, I don't know, working with, the most fast paced, high energy entrepreneur in the world. So it's very easy to like work now with like other entrepreneurs because like I did it at the highest level.
I've heard a rumor that Gary's day is broken up into 5 minute chunks. Is that true?
1,000%.
Wow.
Obviously there's probably some bigger meetings when it might be a consulting sesh, but yeah, they're 5 minute chunks. And even if it's like, I've asked him personally for like 10, 15 minutes, usually gets it all done by like the fourth minute. And then he's like, could I just get some time back? And I'm like, all good, G. And then boom, he's out. And I've been in the car with him like plenty of time where it's just like, he's on a call, then he's off, scrolls Twitter for maybe a second, if there's like a gap between like getting the next meeting going, and then he's on. And yeah, and like I lived that for 5 years, jumped away from it, and then just did another project with him where I was shooting the DailyVee again only 2 months ago. And it was like, nothing changed. He's like, hello. And then back into the madness. That was like bunch of meetings, get here, where's the car, this. And it's just like, that's why this guy's winning. It's just, he hasn't stopped. It's all the same. It's higher level. So it's been interesting to watch as like a creative, because it's expanded me as like a businessman and entrepreneur.
Could I just double tap on that point and
Yeah.
just kind of zoom out? And for being that close to such a high level kind of operator, what
Yeah.
did you learn from that about, yeah, kind of how things work at that level?
Yeah. So much. So it's like I was so obsessed with storytelling, the art form of video shooting and editing. But, then I started learning like efficiency and time. Back to the meeting thing, I'm like, these meetings where Gary's like trying to make VaynerMedia run better. And he's, kind of demonizing a little bit on Slack. He's saying like, an email could have been a meeting. And so I'm like picking up on these things where I'm like, oh yeah, like we can be way more efficient with our time. And even now, like running my business, like, yeah, like I see it. I'm like, all right, cool. Like I don't need to spend all this time with maybe an employee or future client. I'm like, I can get it done way faster. So I think a little bit more like that. And then, the more obvious thing is like, I don't know how he words it exactly, but it's like running yourself out of business. And so what's like working today is probably not going to work tomorrow. And so we tested a lot of new platforms. A lot of them like aren't even around now. And so like, I remember when TikTok came out, it was like just bubbling up way before people knew about it in like 2020. That was like the boom of it during COVID. But a year before that, Gary was like, come on team. And we're like, okay, but like, we're all really busy. And then like a month later, like kind of only started posting a few videos. He's like, yo team, he's like, if we don't figure this out, I'm restructuring the whole thing, which is a nice way of saying like, you guys are gonna get fired. And then we like started going. And then that's what, that's why Gary had such big momentum on that platform. Caleb was leading it. I'm sure he's talked about it on this show. And that first year, it went from like, 200,000 existing followers, which was from the old app, to like 1.1 or 1.5. So yeah, if we just kept doing what we're doing, DailyVee, Instagram clips, and we didn't think about the next thing, yeah, it it wouldn't have been his philosophy. And so those are the things I've been learning. Yeah.
And can you just talk to how someone at that level who keeps running at that pace for such a long kind of period of time, how do they do it?
Gary's just natural, I think. Um, when it comes to the team, I mean, we went through a lot of videographers, creatives, so it's like not everyone's fit for it. Um, I felt like very passionate about it, so it was easy for me to do a 15-hour day, work on the weekend. Like I was living the dream. And so, if there's anyone like trying to scale at that level and that speed, you got to really love it, and you have to have a team that like really has passion for it, or it's just not going to work. And so even when I created a small mini team Gary Vee for my past chapter with Mike Posner, it was mostly people that like really loved working for Mike, and they might not have been good as someone else, but they had like this passion, and they'd like stay up late and work with me at like weird hours. I'm like living in Europe, Mike's in LA, and so I needed people that like could like be online and like enjoyed it.
So it's really all about having people that are bought into that mission and vision. And if they're not, then they're
I
probably
think
not
so.
going to.
Yeah, and like understanding like what their goals are too. One of my guys was like a video intern. He was like 18, now he's like 19, and so it's like figuring out like, okay, like what do you want out of this? And so obviously I saw it's like, okay, this is like his first legacy client, but I tried doing a good job of like understanding like where these people in the at least creative team wanted to go, and that was like helping everything because like they know they're moving up in their life, and they were also like pushing the brand forward. So I felt good on that part.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then kind of back to what you were doing. So obviously the kind of
Yeah.
shooting, editing, bit of being an assistant as well. What else were you getting involved in? Was it kind of ideation and planning and strategy as well? And what other stuff would you?
Yeah, the ideation and the strategy came on later. I really had to prove myself as a creative, and so I was shooting a lot of video in the beginning, long form editing, a lot of like specialized editing where Gary might tap on my shoulder and be like, "Hey, I got this new thing launching," and it might be like, later down the years, it was like VeeFriends. I got a call on like a Sunday. It was like, "Yo, man, like we need like the launch video tomorrow for this," because it really happened fast. So I was like really a specialized editor in that sense. Shooter too. Mike Boyd is Gary's like music manager, music relationships manager. He would be like sitting at my desk editing, and he'd come up and be like, "Hey, I got Russ coming in, or I got like Gunna, or like these artists." He's like, can you meet me in the lobby in like 5 minutes and like shoot with them coming in and like the interview with Gary?" And I'm like, "Yeah, 100%." So it's versatile in that sense, and that was very creative leaning. Um, it became way more strategy driven, honestly, in my last chapter with Mike. It's like where I really had to prove myself. So I think we could talk more about that once we get into that chapter.
Okay, for sure.
Yeah.
Sticking with the kind of Gary chapter though, you mentioned a point there of, you know, strategy shifting when, there's something new coming along like VeeFriends. What does that mean and how does that impact you?
Yeah. So at the time, like it's COVID. And so I'm doing mostly remote editing. And then we start going back to office. And now I'm like hybrid again. I'm shooting a lot for Gary, mostly like working for other parts of his company, 137, which is like more of like a publishing company, telling stories of like other creators. And then then I'm working with like a specialized group. It was like me, David Rock, and Nima Van. And then, David's doing most of the shooting. He's like with Gary when they were like drawing these characters in Malibu. Nima's there too. And then we come back and we're like, cool, like we have all this footage. Like, what are we gonna do? And we were very like siloed in like building up that sort of like those hero videos and the things that went out for like VCon and stuff. And the strategy changes only in the sense that Gary is now focused on this other thing. And so it's like the team was like had a lot of his time in 2018 and 2019 when he wanted to like put out Ask Gary Vee or start a new show called Weekly V or Trash Talk. But now it's like he's starting this whole new company, boom of NFTs, and so he's less Gary Vee at this point. Like he's less interested in doing the podcast, and so you have to like as a team, we started like having to figure out like how are we going to get this like content from him? Are there like shorter time blocks that we can like record stuff with him? And think that's why you saw during COVID, he did like the underrated, overrated series, because you only needed him for like 30 minutes, an hour. And you'd think, it was the attention span was better. Like people were like consuming that quicker. So yeah, strategies changed just based on like the time that we had and where his focus was.
Okay. And is it tough for you to kind of be split or pulled in multiple different directions, right?
Yeah, because there was definitely conversations of like, oh, like when are we bringing back the vlog? Because there would be times when it would disappear, when we weren't getting enough footage, or it was like, when are we bringing back the podcast? And so I was lucky in the sense that I think I proved myself in the earlier years where I could navigate my career in the ecosystem of like the things I wanted to go do. Because there was a point in time where, just as we're coming back to office, like 2021, where I was like, yeah, I think I want to like navigate into a different part of the company and start making like more films and like just tell different stories. And that's when I joined 137, and we shot with a lot of like creators, like a lot of up and coming artists. Beeple, who's like the NFT. He made like the world's largest NFT. We documented that story of him selling a $69 million piece. So yeah, I was always chasing what I wanted, but sometimes I had to step away from that, and like if Gary had a new thing popping off, I had to just help him execute on it. So yeah.
This might be slightly boring, but from an operational perspective, how does this system run? Because it seems from the outside that things are, like we said before, quite chaotic. There's a lot of different projects going on. You're kind of being pulled in multiple different directions. You're wanting to achieve your goals. You're wanting to, work on this new project, whatever. How does the business run, and who kind of decides what the strategy is, and who works on what?
Yeah, so at the time, Andy Kranek was the manager of Team Gary, and so he's driving all the strategy. He's directly tied to Gary, driving all the strategy down to these we'll call them channel managers. They have different titles, and one of them is like now the new head of Team Gary, and then those people are like coming down to people like me, shooters, editors, creatives, to make sure like each platform is executing the way that they want it to. Could be like LinkedIn, could be YouTube, could be the Instagram, which usually was like the main focus. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of operations behind that. Like we worked heavily with like programs like Asana. The footage was stored locally on like a massive server. We also like had to upload it to Google Drive in case we were like mobile. There was like many different like ways of like how we like log the footage, because like we're getting like 10 hours of footage a day, and so then the easiest way was if the videographer was like note taking and like letting know, hey, we just got these 10 really good moments. We built out like different systems in Asana where it was like rating the timestamps, but it just kept evolving over time. Some seasons we get a lot of footage, some seasons we wouldn't, and so we'd start like the system wouldn't work the same anymore. And so yeah, it was kind of like a hierarchy, but we all like, and then we also like at one point that we didn't have these like platform leads. It was like everyone was just kind of like working on everything, and then we're like, cool, we need to like silo these like teams: Instagram, YouTube, written. And so yeah, the biggest thing is it evolved just based on like what we were trying to map towards, and that was coming from Gary and Andy.
So am I correct in saying that each kind of initiative, so VeeFriends or one of any
Yeah.
of these kind of channels, then they have a manager in place, and then underneath that you have the different kind of platform people?
Yeah. VeeFriends is different. They were focused more on like the sales of it in the beginning. And I didn't like work directly on the team, so it's hard for me to like say like exactly what they did. Easier since I was on Team Gary in 137. And so yeah, it just depended on like where they were at. At first it was NFTs, then it was like, cool, we got to build this IP and like start building shows. Then it was like VCon, we got to like start promoting this conference. We're gonna have like all these entrepreneurs come, and we're like, how are we gonna make the content for it? And so yeah, it was really just the task at hand, and then the teams like kind of structured within that.
And is there one overall guiding North Star, or what is your kind of guiding KPIs or kind of metrics?
Yeah. On the Gary side, it was it's funny. Gary talks about how like if he got stopped more in the airport, that was like sort of like a non-metric KPI. He knew that the content was working. So yeah, that came out of a meeting actually with Mike Posner when Mike, because Mike actually went to Gary and had nothing that Gary didn't connect me to like Mike or anything, but they had met at one point. And Mike Posner's like, how do I, what am I tracking? And he's like, I track how many times I get stopped in the airport. He's like, that's how I know if like the content's connecting. And so that one's a little bit more funny, but yeah, we tracked like overall reach, just to see if like the content was getting consumed more. But then there was like, if Gary had a book coming out, we had to like map towards that. And so um, it was more for like what the initiative of that quarter was. A lot of times it was like his shoes in collaboration with K Swiss. A lot of stuff was mapped towards that.
Okay. And you mentioned the agency as well, and I think you said you were involved in 137.
Yeah.
Yeah, how involved did you get on the agency side?
On the agency side, not so much. When I moved out here, VaynerMedia Amsterdam was just starting, and I was really helping out with a lot of video projects for VeeFriends. So it's funny. I was like, Gary, I'm like, I think I want this role at VaynerMedia, and he's like, no, it's like you're not gonna like it. It's not like creative enough. It's too structured. Like you have to go back and forth with the client. He's like, I'd rather you like stay closer to me. He's like, because you're gonna enjoy that more, and you're more cut out for that. And I'm glad he said that at the time because I was just hungry to kind of not do anything, but like maybe just level up in a different area. But I'm glad I didn't go that route because it wouldn't have helped me in the chapter I am now or the one before. And he definitely was right because I worked like literally next to the person, and I was like, oh, this isn't really that creative a role. You're just making decks for the client and trying to like move the needle that way. So he was a good leader in that sense where he always positioned me well. And then even when I had to go, I was very transparent along the way. And he was kind of like the driving force that was like, hey, if you don't take this opportunity, you might regret it in the future. And I just want you to hedge against that. It's like actually what he said. And I was like, probably good advice. And so I ended up taking it just based on how much he wanted me to hedge against regret.
Okay. So that you're talking about there is the kind of move to Europe and some of the other stuff you started working on, right?
Yeah. So like at one point, Gary just asked me transparently, he's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I'd love to move to Europe. And he had a London office. So I was like, cool, I'm gonna go to London. He's like, I'll make it happen. It's like a long process too, so it wasn't like overnight. But during the process of it, talking to HR and all that, he's like, oh, I'm opening up VaynerMedia Amsterdam, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to go there. I think just being mainland Europe felt better, and yeah, ended up working out here a year, mostly like I said, VeeFriends stuff, and then late 2023, I get on a call with Caleb Ralston. He's like, hey man, I just got in touch with Mike Posner. He's looking for a creative lead. He's like, I can't think of anyone better. Love to just refer you. And it was interesting because I'm like living in Amsterdam. He's out in LA, working for Gary for the past 5 years. I have like no intention of leaving. And yeah, then it just became like a lot of conversations, trial shoots with Mike. So that's kind of the transition there.
Okay, so I do want to get onto the, talking about Mike, but before we do that, you mentioned there the move to Europe. What was the motivator behind that?
Yeah, if I'm being straight up, it wasn't like business motivated. It definitely had like more motivation on the creative side. Like I had just, I've been shooting a lot of stuff in New York. I've traveled the States, and I was like, man, it'd be great to go shoot more stuff in Europe. It just felt super interesting. And so that was really the driving force. And my partner's from Ireland, and, she had lived here. And so I had like a little bit of context of the lifestyle and stuff. And I think for me at that time, I was like living in New York for, I don't know, 4 years, kind of on and off. And it was a lot. Like the, I was definitely burnt out by the end of it. Like I didn't realize it, but once I got to Europe and like sort of like consolidating my life and working just more organized, because like we talked about, it was a little bit chaotic with Gary, and so it was needed. I extracted what I needed from New York City in that chapter, and I knew felt like the right move. And the day I moved was like the first time I ever stepped foot in Europe, so I took a big risk. Yeah, like sold everything, sold my car, had to move my dog. Like, but I knew like just wholeheartedly it was the right move, and it was. I've been here almost 3 years, so yeah, the motivator was I think just taking a breath from New York City, the hustle culture, and just having this new landscape to explore. It felt like played a lot of video games growing up. It felt like a new map, like a new DLC pack or something.
And 3 years later, what are your thoughts on Europe versus the US?
A lot. I love it out here. It's when I meet people, I have a lot of friends now. We don't always talk about work. I think when I'm in the States and I'm in New York City, like I just visited, and it was like a lot of conversations just about like leveling up and what's next and how's your business, and it was great. I was like, I gotta visit more. I'm like, because I got a business that I just started, but out here there's a little bit more of a emphasis on life, and so yeah, love that I can just drive to Switzerland. It's like, usually if I drove 10 hours, I'm in like, I don't know, Tennessee, which is still great, but just like, I'm used to that growing up. So, um, yeah, it's been nice being able to have both.
Okay. And then, yeah, obviously you also had the big change from the work perspective. What was the reason to shift from my perspective, what seems like things completely to working with Mike?
The reason behind it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'd say I was only an editor, because it was going to be like when I moved out here, had plans of like shooting more. I was like hoping to do stuff with like F1 and football, and I think I would have went on to do that, but it was like not many people out in the company over here. I'm sort of this like specialized person that's like not working for clients. I'm kind of like building up my own thing, and then Gary's really like heads down with VeeFriends, and so I was just looking for like the next challenge because I was like only editing, and with this, I knew I was gonna have to take what I learned with from Gary and apply it to his brand. And so when I met with Mike, he was like, "I want to just expand my brand." He's like, "I believe in it's like two H's." He's like, "It comes from my father. His father had passed. So there's two H's to life, health and happiness." And so he's like, "I want to help bring that to my audience, and not just be the music guy." And so yeah, it felt like an all around good challenge. I'm like, cool. I'm gonna go work for an artist and I've always wanted to, and then I can do a lot of the things I learned with Gary. I'm like, cool. He wants to be a thought leader. I'm like, that's what we did for Gary. I can apply that to his brand, and so yeah, it just felt like the right next challenge.
Okay. So was there an element of the learning curve maybe of working with Gary had
Yeah,
kind of flattened?
yeah, because like with Gary's team, it was 30 people, like maybe 20, 30 creatives, and then with Mike, it was just me, him, and his EA, and with like big aspirations. Like he wants to start a podcast. He wants to start doing, as much as he wants to do thought leadership, he still wants to go do his music and do touring and stuff. And so, how to do it all myself? I was shooting, like flying out there, like shooting the content, editing it, posting it, making sure like email marketing, like all like the sort of things that existed in this ecosystem were going, and then built it up from there. And so, yeah, I hadn't done much hiring, so I had to like figure out all that, and yeah, so that was the bigger stuff that I had to learn these past 2 years.
Okay. And on kind of day one or in that kind of hiring process, what was the North Star that Mike gave you? Like, what was the goal?
Yeah, consumption of content, but rebrand him. So like I just mentioned, he on social, he just launched a album with it's like a collaborative album. It's called Mansions, and so it's actually really interesting because prior to that, it's like general content. It's like fun, Mike, and then Mansions is like this sort of embodiment of a more edgy, like sort of like character that he puts on, and so like it's a little bit masculine. Like I can't really go into like what the content was, but it's pretty like explicit. And then like he's hiring me, and he's like, I want to like change the world. And so like right before entering, I got all this content that's like very like kind of off brand, like very like just super interesting. And then I'm like, cool, got to build it up from the beginning. And like I said, like he just lost like 20% of his followers because like they had been seeing this like progression of this person who was like building themselves up, mental health, like walked across America, which I get into like a little bit of his history. Drops his album, loses a bunch of followers, and then he brings me on, and so yeah, I had to really start from scratch and like build it up. And so we started with podcasts because that was his first idea. He's like, I want to start a podcast, and that was the first mission. Like, yeah.
Okay. And how do you approach rebuilding someone? So obviously, for people that don't know, Mike's had, a long history, right? How do you build brand from this point of joining him?
Yeah, understanding where he's at in the story arc that is him. And so I had to like really learn like the whole picture of like Mike Posner. It's like he's this guy at 20, has this hit song, starts touring, then the sort of like opportunities fizzle out because he's not making hits anymore. He gets shelved as an artist, falls into a depression, has another big hit when like a song gets remixed. It's called I Took a Pill in Ibiza. And same thing, goes up, comes back down, and then he's even more depressed. And then his dad dies, his like peer Vici dies, and then he was like, cool, I'm gonna die one day, so I gotta go do these things that I've always dreamed of. And one of them was walking across America. So he walks across America, New Jersey to California. Soon after that, he's training for like a year to then climb Mount Everest. And then he comes back and he's like still figuring it all out. And but he's like learned a lot of things along the way from the music, from those things. And so I had to like embody that person. It's like I'm not starting from like, you know, in the present day. I'm like, I got to tell the story of like everything that just happened too, even though he had posted a little bit about it. And so yeah, it was it's like a little bit of like journalism in a way, asking him questions, being like an interrogator of like, you know, getting the more vulnerable side. So that's how I started approaching it, more human approach. And there's like a lot of like ways to do that. Get him on podcasts, go film with him on a walk, you know, have ideas already for him. And so yeah, it's just the way we packaged it was at first podcasting, and then we realized it was actually better if we just had the camera with him, and also like being live with his audience he was really good with. Yeah.
How do you choose which parts of the story to tell, or which parts of the brand that you want to kind of shine the light on?
Yeah, a lot was driven from Mike. And so if anyone's like, you know, whether you're the creator or the entrepreneur, like, you know, don't be afraid of like just telling your creative lead like what you want to do. And so a lot of times he was like, you know, I want to talk about my sobriety, I want to talk about these like very vulnerable things. And then, you know, it's my job to like continue that. And so I'd pick up on stuff. I really liked spending time with him and finding these like small things. And like one example is like I was in his car and he has like this journal note that he like taped to his steering wheel, and it says like, I, Mike Posner, vow to love myself no matter what. And I was like, that's cool. And he's like, yep, like normal for him. I was like, can I take a photo of that? And we posted it, and it did like really well. And so then I recorded a video about it, like with him. I'm like, why do you have that? And so, you know, those were ways where I was like bringing the human to the internet, not this like structured thing. And so, yeah, those are like, that's like one way of like choosing like what things to talk about. And then you start like, as you start putting out a lot more content, you're like, I was like, oh wow, every time he talks about his father dying, like for whatever reason that like is really resonating with our audience, and people are like talking about like their family members that passed. I was like, hey, we should like lean into that. So it's yeah, it's being curious about the person you're working for or the message you're trying to get out, and then also like looking at the comments, DMs, and being like, that's interesting. Like every time we put out that style of content, it does well. People want more. So those are, I mean, that's just two ways that you start rebuilding up a brand.
Sure. And you mentioned there different channels. So I think you said, you know, podcast, lives, and you know,
Yeah.
all these different channels. How do you kind of decide what to focus on, and how do you build out a strategy over time?
Yeah. At first, it was Mike was like very confident. He was like, I want to do this podcast. But it was clear over time that like his schedule and his lifestyle wasn't built for it. And so I learned that pretty hard because it's like hard to like nail down guests that we wanted. He's traveling a lot. And so now I have a good like, you know, vision of that. If somebody like is at his caliber, I'd probably advise like, hey, like make sure your schedule's good. It's a lot of like logistics on the back end to like keep it going. I mean, you do it at like a probably big scale too. It's just like it's tough, like locking in everything. Um, and so started with that, but then we realized like because on the part of the podcast was we'd bring up people live, and that would always happen to be like the most interesting part, is having these like breakthrough moments with like random people who were like so excited. So then we started posting Zoom links. We're like, hey, going live on Thursday, come and join. He would lead like a breath work, little distinction, like a story of his life, and then we'd bring up like 2 or 3 people, and that became like this new format for us where we'd extract clips from it. But then we also were like, oh, this can be like a whole little community of like not super fans, but people that are like really drawn to like the thing that we're trying to put out right now, which is like music, breath work, and like this new style, like modern spirituality.
Okay. And then I want to talk now about operation and the kind of machine. So you went in there, you really did start from scratch. What do you do with regards kind of team and kind of building out the operation?
Yeah, so the podcast machine was different. And so I think I'm like, I don't even think I'm going to go into detail of that, but it was like working with a producer that could like help shoot it because I wasn't always there. But then as we went into the more mature team, it was someone has to be shooting the content, couldn't be me all the time. And then that footage would be, and usually we had a plan going in. So I wouldn't like just have a videographer show up. Like there was sort of like a brief of like what we're going to capture based on the things we just talked about. Like, hey, noticing like this question or these topics do well. Content gets captured, gets sent back, whether it was me or sort of a creative strategist for like pulling out clips. And then I was still using Asana, which was like, I took it from Team Gary. There's a lot of like good platforms, Notion, Trello, but I enjoyed that platform. And then we'd build out tasks, but we just call them tickets. And it would be title of the clip, the asset, the timestamp, notes of like the edit, and then it's getting sent to the editor, and then there's different rounds of like it's for review, now it's getting sent back for its like edits. And so that's like the sort of like creative machine. Like at the final point it gets sent to Mike because I still want him to like write copy for it. We could have used ChatGPT, but I saw that he's a writer. Like he's written songs for like Justin Bieber and Maroon 5. I was like this, and he was writing a book at the time, and so I was like, I'm like, I have a feeling he's going to write some thoughtful stuff, and he did. And so a lot of times, as the head of content for him, I had to be like, oh wow, this just the copy for this video that we made is its own standalone piece. And so I started building out. Then at that point, I built out its own ticket, and so that copy would become a tweet. That tweet might become a carousel. That carousel might become its own video because it might be like a little bit different than what we captured it in the original video. So, yeah, that made things like get recycled and kind of like Mike wasn't always available, so it was like, how do we get a volume of content if we only have so much time with him? So that's a little bit into the content machine. There's a lot more I can go into, but I think that's like a little glimpse of like from idea to getting it posted, and then like the sort of like recycling of content.
For sure. And what does the team look like that you built?
Yeah, at first it was me with I'm like head of content, overarching strategy and finding these people and like making sure I'm like working with the EA. I'm like, when's Mike available? When are we gonna shoot? Oh, he's got this hike coming up. So I'm finding like, we had like our go-to videographer, but then I'd have to find like a specialized videographer that can like go hike for 50 miles over the course of 2 days in the Grand Canyon. So I'm on the phone with all these like jacked videographers, and I'm like, I'm like, I'm like asking them, I'm like, how fit are you? Like weird things. I'm like, can you prove to me that like you're really strong? Because like they're not sightseeing, like they're gonna go at like an Olympic pace. And so me, videographers, I had two core editors, one writer who was helping with the email marketing. Later on, I brought on another outside agency that was helping with the paid media, and then we had a graphic designer that helped. There was two of them. One was more like an artist that was like for like album covers and like amazing shots, like if we had like a song coming out. And then another one was more like creative stuff, thumbnails, stuff like that. So that was like the core team, and then there might have been some other people I tapped into, but those were the core people.
Okay. And in terms of the kind of day-to-day execution, would you ever script content, or is it kind of, idea, go?
Mike was really good off the cuff, but he still did like a point, like something to read and then just jump off of it. And so yeah, I created a lot of video briefs, and with the hook, with the sort of like structure, and like I'd write it as if I was him, but I knew he would like just use it as like a base level. So I didn't ever have to like script it to a T. It was just like, this is roughly what you should say in the beginning. This is what the body's about. Ends it like this. But I would say like more than half the content was more conversational, which I think is actually like a lot better for people. In a world where like, my buddy Caleb, and I've learned a lot from like how the Hormozis and how their team created their content. There should be structure to how you approach like those talking head videos, recording with different hooks, and like really having a plan of attack for like how the video unfolds. But not everyone's like Alex or Layla, and so it can be challenging to like take that script and be interesting. And so conversational content's actually like I've found a lot more strategic, and it's a lot easier. And I think I can go into that a little bit more strategy if you wanted to.
Yes, please do. So my initial question on that was going to be, how do people, or how would you advise people to go about finding the type or format of content that best suits them?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, so you're talking about the actual topic.
Not necessarily topic. It could be, what you said there about, maybe some people are more suited to conversational content.
Yeah, my biggest tip for anyone that's whether they're just starting out making content or they're just trying to like elevate what they're doing already would be to maybe step back and not do the direct to camera stuff and find a more conversational angle, because it can come off a little like forced if you're not natural at speaking to the camera. And so yeah, there's like kind of like two tips, like just thinking about how we did it with Mike. One was getting in a good state. So a lot of times we would shoot content during his workout or after his workout or during a walk. And so like that just puts you in like a better mental state. If you're just coming off a meeting, like Gary Vee is a good example of like someone who can like just come out of a bad meeting and then have an amazing rant. But not a lot of people like are going to be good. And so I would say like step one, get in a good state. And I would highly advise doing the content maybe after a workout, during a workout, and then position yourself to do more conversational content. And what I mean by that, it could be like many different things. It could be your videographer talking to you. And so if you have an idea, just make it more of a conversation where your videographer behind the camera is like, hey, like, they ask you a question and then you speak back to them. And then the other side of that would be, how do you position yourself to like talk with other people in the content? So similar to like a podcast, but it doesn't have to be. So it's like, some of the greatest content I made with Mike was after VCon, his fans kind of like swarmed him a little bit, and then he like spent the time to like speak with them, and that content was like really thoughtful and really good. And so yeah, I can unpack it a little bit more, but I think that's kind of like the high level.
I know, I like that. I want to talk now about kind of topic planning as well. So similar kind of point or question, but how do you find, what you're best to talk about and what resonates the most?
Yeah, a lot of people, I mean, you have to throw stuff at the wall. So it's like, if I never put out the content, I got, the stories of how Mike's passing led to him like walking across America and like this overarching like inspiration, like motivation behind that. I wouldn't realize like that was like a really good topic to start with leading into a lot of his stuff. So you got to like start there, putting out stuff and like taking tabs of like, okay, this resonated. This maybe got more views or maybe got more comments. We actually like started like tracking deep comments. So that would be like a more like, hey, if I didn't see this post today, I don't know if I'd be, around anymore. Like actual like deep messages and DMs. So we were like really finding like really our KPI was that, because for Mike it was like changing lives. And so if we got a lot more DMs, that's how we knew we were doing well. But other topics, yeah, it just depends on the goal itself. His goal was like changing lives. If your goal is like bringing more revenue or like selling more product, then you might have to lean more into like topics for that. Yeah.
No, that's very interesting. Could we just talk to timelines now? So, initially, obviously, you've got to strip back the kind of layers of Mike and come up with, the brand essentially and plan content and, all these different ideas that you have. How long does that take before you get into kind of a rhythm of, we know what we're doing here?
Yeah, sometimes it feels like are we ever in the rhythm of it? And then other times it was like, like 3 months in, like after we kind of like went through the podcast and I had a little bit more like team allocation, I was like, cool, like we have a little rhythm here. We know like when to show up, when Mike's feeling like how he's doing content. Because a lot of people like, might want to record in the morning. Mike was when sundown hit, like he was going to sleep, like he didn't want any like lights on cameras. So he's a very like specialized person in that sense. So yeah, the systems and like that, it probably took us around like 6 months to like feel like super solid in that sense.
Okay. And then just from your perspective, what was harder, defining, the initial kind of brand mission or building that kind of back end machine that you talked about earlier?
Yeah, it was both. the mission for like when I walked in, Mike was very clear on it. You know, it was like, hey, I went through like this dark period. I've learned a lot of these tools through walking across America, Everest, going to Tony Robbins events. He's like, I really want to like create a world like that. So that was easier because I knew like that's like cool. This is the world. And so then the back end stuff was really important too. A lot of times, like in the beginning, we were recording all this footage and then it's not going out. Like we're forgetting about it. Same thing, even in Gary's world, you know, when I came in, there was a backlog of footage where it was like 30 days. Same thing with Mike. It was like, oh no, like we recorded this meeting with him and this up and coming artist. And then like, it wasn't coming out, or even the hike he did in the Grand Canyon. So that, if you're asking which one's more important, probably that is the operations of like actually planning it out and doing it. And so, yeah, and that's what I've been like helping a lot of people out now is like talking, like I've been talking with a lot of like potential clients who have like a videographer or like a small team, and they're like have a content flow, but like they don't like have it organized and they don't like know how to like push things forward, and like yeah, it just feels like they're just doing the same thing over again.
Okay. I want to talk now on, about what you're doing with Still Jason. What was the thought process behind, going out on your own after all this time of, building other people's brands?
Yeah.
Why do you want to do your own thing?
Yeah, it's like, back to moving out to here in Europe, like my life's different now. If I was in New York, I wouldn't have started this company. But since I'm out here, I have to scale a little bit more virtual. And so I knew jumping out of this chapter with Mike, I was like, and I had just traveled a lot, did like 5 months with him, and most of my network's in the US. So I was like, if I go into working for the next personal brand, I'm gonna have to continue traveling a lot. I'm putting all my eggs in one basket. And so, yeah, I didn't want to do that this time around. I'd rather really go hard with like 4 core clients, and that might be creative work, that might be just strategy. And I knew I could scale something much bigger for myself, and I'm finally at the point where like I know how to do that. Like if I left Gary and didn't do the Mike chapter and just started this like Steel Jason brand consultancy and creative shop, I wouldn't know how to run it properly, and I wouldn't have the right advice because I would have just came out of a team that was like, it's a well-oiled 30-person machine, where the one with Mike, I had to like go through so many kinks, so many learnings, a lot of failures too, just like, and so yeah, that's why I did it. Just at the point in my life where I know I can reach a lot more people and like impact like through not working through one singular brand.
Okay, interesting. And you mentioned there the name again that you've mentioned before on this podcast is Still Jason. Can you just talk to how you ended up with that moniker?
Yeah, I originally was going to call the company after my dog. I didn't really have a good name for it, and then I was on a walk, and then I was like, all right, I'm going to use this video where Gary like steals me, because it's like really like the pivotal moment in my career. I'm like, that'd be a good hook for the announcement video. And I was just like thinking about it, and he's like, I'm going to steal Jason. And then I was like, went on Google, it was available as a domain, and I was like, yeah, that makes so much more sense. I'm like, it's very actionable. It is the thing that I want people to do. I want people to see me as this creative partner, like strategic partner, and so I want them to, like Gary did, steal me. And so that's why I leaned heavily into it, and that's what I'm building now.
Okay, and you've kind of given some key highlights on this, but can you just talk a bit more to what you're actually going to be doing at Still Jason?
Yeah, so I'm offering 2 core things right now. One is private brand strategy consulting, and then the other side is creative direction. And so I have a client already. He's in the business space, CEO that's like done very well in his professional career. Brought like an app from like 3 to 80 million, and he's done some content in the past, and he's like friends with all like that Alex's and Gary's, but yeah, he doesn't know how to like build, or I think want to use his time building a team, and so he's hiring me to figure that out. So he has a videographer, and I'm coming in as his like strategy partner, and I'm trying to figure out, is his videographer the right person? Can we find you a creative lead? And then building up a lot of the things I did for Mike, but catering it to his needs. Mike wanted like his own team that could like really like hang and manage, whereas he wants to be a little bit more hands off. So it's customizing that, and so that's a lot of the strategy stuff. It's like really like formulating teams or mentoring teams. Like some of them already have like a core team and they just need to like level up. And then on the creative direction side, that's me leaning more into the artist. And so I'm having a lot of conversations with, like I just talked to this marketing agency out in the UK that works with artists. And so they need a creative out in it, the Netherlands that can shoot with artists. I talked with Gary's brother-in-law. He wants to start doing more short films and stuff. He's a director. So I'm like, all right, cool. That might be an outlet. So the creative direction's more me staying true to like who I am, that kid that like picked up a GoPro 10 years ago and wants to continue pushing that as far as I can. And then the brand strategy is mostly what I'm doing, because it's like really what I spent like learning alongside of that the whole way.
For sure. Can I just clarify that? So obviously the kind of operational side, the machine, that makes complete sense. You kind of advise and help build that out. On the strategy side, is that kind of, I'm the client, I've got some ideas. Jason, can you kind of give me your thoughts and input, or are you kind of, boots on the ground filming?
It's more me delivering the strategy. I think there's going to be a lot of worlds where I am boots on the ground. Like I'm talking with like that client I just mentioned, where he's like, oh, I'm out in Europe a lot. And I was like, perfect. Like I'd love to come shoot, and we'll figure that out. Like but the actual, like what they're buying is my strategy. And I'm happy to, like, if they have their own ideas, like kind of like collaborate with me. But a lot of times like they just don't even know what direction to go. And so, I'm the point person partner in strategy, whether it's their team or them directly, where I'm like, hey guys, like this is working, this isn't working, lean into this. Why aren't you doing written? And just showing them all the behind this, like I said, the Asana stuff. And so, yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of channels, is that, specific? Is it just YouTube, podcast maybe, or is it, agnostic and across?
It's agnostic. I've spent most of my time in Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I'm less the writer, but I feel strongly about written. A lot of the content we put out for Mike was written content. And so, yeah, I personally can't write well, but I can advise on it. And so, yeah, Instagram's probably my core like specialty, but being that I spent so many years, Gary's vlog and whatnot, like YouTube feels good too. So yeah, it's not one platform for sure.
In terms of the people that you're going to be doing this for, is this just business people, or is this, musicians?
No, I'd say like my core people right now are like our business. There's people in sort of like mental health and motivational side of stuff coming to me, and then a lot of artists. So that's my core group. Definitely going to be a lot of business people. Feels like this first chapter. Hoping to reach more artists and build out like more specialized packages for them, because a lot of them are like up and coming, and that might be more creative work, helping them like actually create what they want to put out in the world. But yeah, business, mental health, a lot of just like public figures, a lot of interesting people. Honestly, like all like runs the gamut.
Okay. And are you going to be telling your story as well and kind of putting yourself out more in this chapter?
Yeah, I'm hoping to. I've notoriously not done a good job of that, but I'm gonna. Yeah, I've already have some plans of like recording more content, long form style, like telling my journey, but giving the value up through it, telling the lessons of it, and yeah, similar like what we talked about in this podcast, putting out more successes and sort of learnings through my chapter with Mike and Gary. So yeah, a lot more to come. Just building both things up, the company and me. It's a monster.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, right? And I think people underestimate that sometimes.
Definitely.
Yeah, so when you've got kind of a strategy or a direction in mind that you want to be talking about, kind of the channel, what do you then need to be doing?
Yeah, so it just depends what you're trying to accomplish. So if it's like growing a community, I would say you have to start, and this is more specific to like my last chapter with Mike. He was trying to like grow this thing we called Inner Bloom. And that was a place that lived on, similar to like school.com, we use Circle. And so we had to start putting out a lot more content to drive people into that. And we had to be very specific of like what that content was. And so a lot more mental health driven, more motivational stuff. And then also being clear that we're hosting like these high value things where it's like Mike's going live, free in there. And so really mapping it towards there. That's more specific, for what he was trying to do in this last chapter.
Okay. And I guess my next question is on, for someone that's potentially just getting started with their content journey, is the first step, once they've decided what the content or topic they want to talk about, Is the first step figuring out the platform, or is it choosing kind of the goal of what they want to come out of the content?
I would have a general goal first. It's like, are we, is there, a company or like a product that I have, and so I'm like building up my brand to like sort of like elevate that, or is it I just want to have a little bit more attention on me, just because I know that's going to be like good for like long term of like what you're up to. So general goal is good, and then um, after that, it's just finding mediums of like how to make the content. And so I talked about it earlier with like the conversational stuff. And so I would say if you're not used to just like talking to a camera or picking up a camera and doing it, it's much easier if you're put in a conversational space. So I would like really look for, if you have the allocations, find a videographer that's you have good synergy with, that can like ask the right questions, and you can start building out that way. If it's just you, I would read, maybe like put out a poll and read questions from your audience. That feels like a very like a obvious kind of first step, but then you have to build the strategies out from there, because you can't just keep taking questions from the audience. And so, but that's like step one. I would say is like general goal, and then put yourself in a position where you can like get your point across, and it's not like robotic and like um, a lot of like when you see somebody like first starting out.
And is it your belief that video is the best platform to get started with?
No, it's funny. Like it is a good like it is. We see such organic growth with Reels and TikTok and YouTube, but I see a lot of clients or people that I'm talking to right now, potential clients, where like they make good videos, but they don't put out any written stuff. And so even if that is on Instagram as a reel, um, Alex Mosey is a good example of that. He posts a lot of reels where it's like just like written sort of like graphic thing. With Mike Posner, we would literally, I would screenshot written note apps because it looked like he wrote them, and a lot of times he did write it. And so I wanted to be like come through at like very human, like very like find the emotion in the content. So yeah, I'm not glued to video. It's it's important, but yeah, written's definitely high up there on my
Okay.
list.
And then for you specifically, Jason, you've called yourself, creator, filmmaker, brand architect, and all these different kind of other labels. Which hat feels most comfortable for you now?
At the moment, brand strategist. Yeah, which feels, it's interesting. I like thought I'd always like lean more as like this videographer, the filmmaker, creative director. But since I'm taking a lot of phone calls with a lot of different people in this moment, I feel very strong where it's like if someone came to me and they're like, "Hey, I don't have a content plan. I don't know what to talk about. I only have one teammate," or even if they had like a core team, I feel strongly where it's like coming in as a partner and just like helping them like just find clarity in it, build a better system. Um, and yeah, that's more of who I am now. But I think as I evolve this, I'd like to become this sort of like go-to person where it's like, oh, this guy creates amazing films, but he also has like these one-on-one clients that he like really like helps scale their brand. And so there's probably a few people that do it. I don't know them, but that's what I'm hoping is like this artist who also understands how to build brand on social.
Okay. And what kind of clients go straight to the front of the list for you?
Uh, People that are like long term thinking. Like I have two people that have signed, and just for short term, sort of like test and invest. Like they're like, we're gonna do 3 months together, but both of them, I have like I can tell like off the first call, I'm like we genuinely like each other, and like we both have this like good understanding of like where they want to go, and they're both like, yeah, come the end of this, I'd love to like work long term, because like it like just speaks to I think the ecosystems they built in their businesses. They're like, yeah, like a lot of people around me have been around me for like 8-10 years, and so the people I work with, you know, or start to work with, I hope that's what we lead into, and so um, that's this type of energy. But then a lot of those people are business, um, and so I feel like business people understand it. They're quicker. We can like make better maneuvers. Like a lot of times they don't have team, but I have to connect them with an agency who makes editors or videographer, and both these people are like so quick. I'm like, hey, like, you available now? They're like, yes. Boom, we're on a phone call, and now we shoot her. So they can actually take the strategy and execute it. So that those feel like ideal people to me. But like I said, I think I'll work with a lot of artists too, which is different. Working with like their management and stuff. Um, so
That makes sense.
yeah,
Can I also touch on, so you mentioned, I think you said, you want to be working with, maybe 4 or 5 people max at any one time.
Mm-hmm.
Why that route versus what seems to be what a lot of people are doing, which is the kind of mass approach with, maybe a cohort, or, a course or
Community and stuff. Yeah, I've thought about it. I know I can do better work one to one, but that eliminates a lot of people because there's a price point for that I'm confident that I want to charge, and I'm already like acquiring those clients, and so then there's a lot of people who are like, cool, I really like you, I think I could really help you, but you can't afford that. So I am thinking about like a group thing. We talked about it at one point, like a one to many, and so that might be like a 10-person thing for a lot cheaper. Um, the course thing doesn't feel right for my brand. I don't know if I want to be the guy on the internet, even though I've built like a free, school like group for Mike Posner. His was rooted more in helping people. Me going on the internet saying I have this community, I'm not sure if it fits right. Might like it feels like I'll just kind of be like the same cookie cutter avatar of these other people instead of being like who I am, where it's like this specialized person that spent so many years working with Gary Vee, Mike Posner, and now you can extract his knowledge and you really get it because it's like you have most of my time. And so that's why I'm thinking about it that way.
And then you've talked a bit today about reclaiming your identity as a filmmaker. What would a fully expressed filmmaker, Jason, look like? And yeah, is there anything holding you back from going there?
There's nothing holding me back other than I've just been like working in house for these like creators, and so now I've been having a lot more conversations where I can take on more interesting ideas. And so I just got off the phone with this woman who I met through Mike Posner's world, and she has like a year to live, but she's also like an incredible runner, so she's like training for like her comeback sort of like race. And so I was like, oh, that and she's moving across the world, so I was like, that'd be an amazing story to document. And so if I had like a little bit more robust team around me, because I'm just one person, that's the more advanced filmmaker, so I can go execute on that immediately. Yeah, make films that like really like change narratives or like bring out emotion. That's where I'm headed. And so yeah, and also in the music side too, I'd love to be the creative director that people go to when it's like a new release, or sort of like short film they need in sort of like parallel to an album's coming out. I'd love to be that kind of go-to person.
Very cool.
Nothing holding me back other than I just need to like put in more reps and go build that up.
Is that the plan then, kind of medium term, I guess, over the next 5 years or so?
Yeah, I'm
Build it.
hoping. Yeah, I have like a good connection base out here where I hope as artists come in on tour, I'll work with them on the more creative side, and on the brand strategy side, I feel like I have a good core sort of network already that I'll work with. I think a lot of like good referrals will come through that way. I think putting out content will bring in good leads, and so it's like building up two things. It's like just keeping my ear out for creative projects that really like resonate with me. They're probably not really about the money, and then really delivering for these business owners and other public figures that I'm working with. So then,
Very
like,
cool.
then I establish this. That's the guy if you wanted to go do it.
Okay. And over
Yeah.
time, do you want to build out kind of more of a team and have that structure in place?
Yeah, I already have like one person who's like sort of like a thought partner. So I was finding myself like going on like all these like exploratory calls or the first few calls, and I was like, I just want to talk with someone about it. And so I have one partner joining the calls, but I think eventually I'd like an admin, and I think if as the creative ramps up, definitely we'll need like a strong editor, and sort of like project manager. So yeah, it'll get built up, but I think it's going to be a while.
Okay, Jason, it has been an absolute pleasure
Yeah,
talking to you today.
Jordan, I really appreciate it, man. This is fun.
Where's the best place to find you, and what type of businesses or individuals?
Yeah, steeljason.com is the best place to go because you can just look at some of my stuff and then you can book a call. It's free. I'm open to talking to anyone just to see if like it works. I'm not gonna like hard sell anyone. Like I really just want to work with people that I have genuine synergy with and I can genuinely help. And yeah, best people are, they want to build their personal brand. They understand that it's a marathon, and best suited for people that want to build at least a lean team, videographer and editor, they don't have to have it like in-house. They could work with an agency, but it's someone that like really wants to put out their message at scale. And so, yeah, it could be a business owner, it could be, working with like an artist who, she has like alopecia and she does like face art and like tries to help women with like their confidence and stuff. So yeah, it like runs the gamut. But yeah, anyone that's like really trying to put out their message and needs to elevate it on social, that's steeljason.com.
Okay. And are you active on any social platforms or?
I'm all X in Instagram, mostly Instagram, and that's just under my name, jason.morena.
Perfect. Well, Jason, thanks again for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Jordan. This was really great. I had a really good time.
Scaling an ecom brand is hard. That's why we're on a mission to share as much info as we can to help make it easy. From weekly interviews with the biggest names in the space, to case studies, brand breakdowns, and tips and tricks, and much, much more. Subscribe so you don't miss out.